You're listening to the weekly Parsha Podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramah Shemesh Israel, 5783, 2023. This week's Parsha is Parsha Yisro, and we have the most momentous moment in history, the most cataclysmic, awe-inspiring moment in history. The Jewish people, 1.5 million people strong, experiences open revelation across the board. Every single person experiences and hears Hashem's voice speaking, and out of the cloud and out of the thunder comes the voice of Hashem roaring like a lion. Anochi Hashem, I am Hashem, your God. And this is the first of the 10 Commandments, the first obligation on mankind, on the Jewish people, especially to recognize that Hashem is God. Hashem is the source of all creation. Hashem is all that there is. I'd like to share with you a medrash, beautiful, beautiful medrash. So I have marked off in my medrash sometimes when I've spoken about this in previous years. Baruch Hashem, been using this set of midrashim which I received as a present from my parents, shikoyach to my parents, and about 5 years ago. So sometime, I like to say new things each week, but this medrash, part of it was used already, and the part that we're going to read, I don't seem to have quoted yet, and it's awesome because it gives us an opportunity to look back at the lion's roar and try to understand what is the idea behind this roaring of the lion, which is a description, as the Medrash says, of Hashem speaking, saying the words Anochi Hashem Elokecha. And it's also very interesting, as we'll soon see, because there are different places where we find that God roars. God roars in other circumstances besides just for his revelation, revealing himself at Mount Sinai. God also roars in other places as well. And it's really instructive to try to understand what's the connection between these places. Let's learn together the pasuk. Let's learn together the medrash which quotes the pasuk. God said, I am Hashem, your God. This is, as we shall soon see, we can understand better what this idea is of Anochi Hashem Elokecha when we look at the pesukim. Another pasuk. It's a pasuk in Amos, chapter 3, verse 5. Aryeh shog, the lion has roared. Mi lo yira, the Lord has roared. When a lion roars, who shall not fear? So, zok the heilige medrash. Aryeh shog hadohu dichsiv, acharei Hashem yelchu ka'aryeh yishog. After Hashem, they will go like a lion that is roaring. So we have the pasuk, who will not be afraid, which is discussed on a previous podcast. Go look back in previous years. And now we're going to also talk about another pasuk which refers to the roaring of the lion. When we follow God, as it were, when the Jewish people is ready to go after Hashem, acharei Hashem yelchu, ka'aryeh yishog. So God, as it were, roars like a lion. What is the idea? Amr Simon. It's comparable to a king who enters into his palace. Shama machroina shaloi v'nasnamakim v'hoisameratetes. So his queen, the queen hears that the king is on his way in, and she hears about it and she starts shaking. So the queen is in awe and fear of her husband, the king. What about all of the slaves and the maidservants? Certainly, if the queen is afraid when the king comes, certainly the slaves need to be afraid. The workers, the servants. Yeah. The Jewish people, the Medrash is saying, is referred to as a matroin, as the queen. We are like God's queen, as it were. We are the queen of the world. God expresses himself through us, through the Jewish people. We bring godliness into the world. We brought the world the Torah. Like we said, if the queen is afraid, what's going to be with everybody else? All the other servants. The Jewish people, it's a famous idea, a famous concept. When we heard the voice of Hashem, Anochi Hashem lekecha, the roaring of the lion. So what happened? So there was thunder and there was lightning and it was an incredible experience. They heard Hashem's voice, vamesu, and they all died. All of them, their souls went out of them from the sheer magnitude of the revelation of Hashem. And on a very simple level, spiritual level, it means that their souls just flew back toward their source. The human being in experiencing God, it's just an awesome, ecstatic experience. Shenemar nafshi yotze b'dabroi, pasuk in Shir Hashirim, in Song of Songs, referring to the Jewish people as God's beloved. Our soul went out. Nafshi yotze b'dabroi, when He spoke. Yisro kach. If the Jewish people, who are God's chosen people, who represent the most godliness that there is in the world, and yet our soul goes out when we hear God speak. Certainly, the idol worshippers of the world, the servants, the slaves of the world, those who are not on the level of the Jewish people, certainly when they hear God's voice, when they hear God's revelation, their soul goes out of them. There's a lack of ability to be civil, to experience, to have that intense experience of godliness. Now, what does this have to do with me? I'm saying this is something that happened 3,300 years ago. But now we're going to see that this wasn't a one-time event. This Aryeh Shoag, this lion's roar of Hashem, as it were, wasn't a one-time event. So it has to do with us, and it has to do with the nations of the world. And it wasn't just then, it's actually all the time. Davar acher. Another explanation, and of course, as I like to say, whenever you have a davar acher, so that means that this is another parallel idea. It's not just a completely different idea, it's a parallel idea, because we're using the same pesukim. We're bringing out parallel concepts. Another explanation of this pasuk Aryeh Shoag, the lion's roar, Amri Rabbana b'shem Rabbi Hoshaya. The sages said in the name of Rabbi Hoshaya, Shal Balza es Rabbi Akiva. There was a particular chacham, a particular wise man, and he asked Rabbi Akiva the following question. He said, when there's thunder in the world, when there's noise in the world, great noise, great earthquakes, great fear comes into man's heart when we hear the thundering. The other night we woke up here in Eretz Yisrael. Many in my community woke up from the powerful thunder that struck. Where does this sound come from? This Balza asked Rabbi Akiva on a spiritual level. At the time of God, God looks at the idol worshippers. He looks at their churches and at their houses of worship, of idolatry. How they're all standing there in peace. The Vatican stands in peace, and all the other places of their worship stand in peace. Mecca stands in peace. Well, Arabs are not idol worshippers. The Muslims believe in one God. But he sees his own house, the Beis Hamikdash, the temple. It's destroyed. It lies in ruins. And the Temple Mount is given over into the hands of idol worshippers. Interestingly, they don't actually worship in the golden, it's not a mosque. In the golden monument, it's a monument. They don't worship there, they worship in the other building that's over on the side. They don't use the mosque for worship. But nevertheless, it's in the hands of idol worshippers, in the hands of non-Jews. Kivyachol Makane. So this makes Hashem angry. His jealousy comes out, his wrath comes out, and he roars, and immediately the heavens and the earth make noise. The thunder thunders. How do we know that that's the source of thunder? How do we know that it's the source of the noise that we hear in the world? It's because the pasuk says in Joel chapter 4, verse 16, God roars from Zion. God roars from Zion, and from Jerusalem he gives forth his voice. So there's something about Yerushalayim and Tzion. Tzion is the Makam Hamikdash, it's the place of the Holy Temple. It's the place, Yerushalayim. It's the Har Hashem Yeroeh. On the mountain of God, there shall you be seen. Avram Avinu called it Yeroeh, called it Yira, Yerushalayim. From that mountain, from the anger of Hashem, the anger of God, because of the fact that there's no Beis Hamikdash, and the place is trampled. It's trampled by those who are forbidden to go there. A non-Jew is forbidden. It's chayiv misa. It's liable for the death penalty if he goes on the Makom HaMikdash, on the place of the Holy of Holies, which is where they go. For this, he calls out, he cries, he is shoig, he roars like a lion. Yisrael meha yuoisin. What does the people of Israel do when God roars? Right? Because when he roars, it means that God is pouring out his wrath. His anger is coming. Kiviyachol hu megin aleim. God, as it were, protects them. Shneimar v'Hashem machaseh la'amoi. God protects his nation. Right? That's the end of that pasuk, which speaks of the roaring of Hashem. There's anger over Jerusalem. The end of the verse says, but Hashem protects his nation. Right? So, take something really practical. Simple. Take a take home, right? You want to be in the space of godliness. You want to be in the space of Hashem. You want to resonate with that which is important to God, as it were. Our hearts should cry. Our hearts should shriek. Our hearts should roar with anger that there are non-Jews trampling upon the holy mountain of Hashem in the Makom HaMikdash, which was reserved, that location was reserved only for the high priest on Yom Kippur. The Kodesh HaKadoshim. He's only allowed to enter the Holy of Holies, the Makom of the Even HaShtiyah. When you see the monument, the Golden Dome, right? What do we need to think when we see it? We need to think, this is the place of Hashem. This is the Holy of Holies. This is the Even HaShtiyah. This is the place, Aram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, where they prayed. And it's currently covered and trampled. And it needs to hurt. It needs to break our hearts. It needs to break our hearts. Hashem achsela amoy. When we have that sense, when we have that feeling, Hashem protects us. We get protection. When we have kisuf, when we have longing for that place, and when we have righteous anger over the fact that that place is being misused, it's not under the hands of the Jewish people as it should be. Davar Acher says the Medrash, another parallel explanation, another aspect. So it's very interesting because we're talking about Hashem announcing his kingship over the world. His Anochi Hashem Elokecha, and that's the Aryeh Shog. And the Jewish people there, they nafshi yotza b'dabra imi. Right? Nafshi yotza b'dabra. Right? The Jewish people's soul goes out when Hashem speaks. And the Jewish people's soul goes out not only when Hashem speaks at Mount Sinai, but when Hashem speaks at Mount Moriah, at Har Moriah. God, there's a roaring there as well, which parallels Anochi Hashem Elokecha. When the Jewish people are the ones who are supposed to hear God's voice on the mountain. First on Har Sinai, on the mountain of God, and on Har Moriah, on the mountain of God, where the Beis Hamikdash is supposed to be. There's a voice of Hashem that's calling out from there. And that voice is lamenting the fact that we are not there. It's lamenting the fact that there's, it's very interesting, this parallel. Let's see another parallel. Beis Hamikdash nikra aryeh. The Medrash gives us a number of parallels of references to a lion in regards to certain spiritual concepts, let us say. The Beis Hamikdash, the holy temple that we're waiting for and longing for, it's referred to as a lion. Shenemar Hoy Ariel Ariel, pasuk in Isaiah chapter 29 verse 1. Hoy Ariel Ariel, referring to the temple, to the Beis Hamikdash, as the lion. Right? What's this lion? Again, we're talking about a lion which roars. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. The Beis Hamikdash just speaks. It roars. There's a powerful noise in the world that God is all that there is. Malchus Beis David, Nikra Aryeh. What's another expression of this? Of the fact that there's a roaring of godliness in the world? Says the Medrash, Malchus Beis David. It's the kingdom of the house of David, Mashiach, the Messiah. He will come and he will reveal godliness in the entire world. Shenemar Ma'im Chalavia Ben Arayos Ravotza. Pasuk in Ezekiel chapter 19 verse 2. Referencing the house of David and referring to it as a lion. It's a lion cub amongst the lions. Yisro Nikra Aryeh. Who represents godliness in the world on a national level? It's the people of Israel. It is we. When we do God's will, when we serve Hashem properly, we represent godliness in the world. Shenemar Gur Aryeh Yehuda. Interesting, right? Judah. All the people today who are from the people of Israel are Jews. We're from Judah, right? And Judah is referred to as a lion cub. I'm going to pause here, even though it talks about something else, a negative aspect of it. I'm not going to get into that. I don't want to go there. Actually, no. Maybe we should. Nebuchadnezzar, I will. We will read it. Nebuchadnezzar Nikra Aryeh. Nebuchadnezzar is also referred to as a lion in the negative sense. He roars as well, but he roars the opposite roar, the roar of evil. Shenemar Ola Aryeh Misubkai. It refers to Nebuchadnezzar, who destroyed the first Beis Hamikdash, the first temple, as a lion who came out of the thicket. He destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, Noktal Malchus Beis David, and he took the kings from the house of David, Veheglas Yisrael. He took that Malchus. He took Malchus Beis David is supposed to rule over the entire world. Right? Mashiach will rule not only over the Jewish people, but the light will spread throughout the entire world. Everyone will come to Beis Hamikdash. Ki beisi beis tefila yikari l'chol ha'amim. It will be a house of prayer for all of the nations. Because at that point, everyone will be able to hear the lion's roar. Right? But Nebuchadnezzar took away the roar with his own evil roar. And God laments, and he sadly says, where is the location of the lion's den? What has happened to it? Where are my children? Hashem roars for the fact that the Beis Hamikdash is occupied. The space is occupied by elements that don't belong there. And God roars because the Jewish people have gone into exile, and because the Malchus, the holy kingship, the kingdom of King David, is not doing its job. It's not able to accomplish its mission because the mission has been usurped by someone who has the opposite mission. Davar acher, last parallel. Says the Medrash that the lion's roar, as we said, is in the Beis Hamikdash. It's in Anochi Hashem. It's in that revelation of godliness. And when the godliness is not being revealed, God is roaring. It's in Aseres Hadibros. It's in the Ten Commandments. Amrulay hein shenemar alei asor v'alei novel. Pasuk says, upon the 10-stringed harp, and on Vale Novel. These are different types of stringed instruments. King David says, it's my job to receive the 10 Commandments. When God speaks, this is an expression of that which it says, that when God speaks, who will not prophesy? Who will not say over their prophecy? David HaMelech is saying, I am expressing with my songs. King David expresses that which Hashem says. David HaMelech is known as Leslemi Gar Meklum. He has no light of his own. He's like the moon that only has light from the sun. That's who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be just a reflection of the light of God. God's light flowing into the world, shining onto us, reflecting out into the world. And when God's, and just like, it's so interesting, just like we said that when the lion roars, who will not be afraid? When the lion roars, who will not be afraid really means when we hear God's voice, Anochi Hashem, I'm Hashem your God, all we can do is shake, because the essence of what that revelation means, or what it means that there's Hashem, that the entire liberal world would like to deny, so that they don't have any obligations. But the truth is, if you hear that Hashem is there, you have no choice but to shake, because it has hashlachot, it has ramifications. It means that I need to be much higher, much greater. I need to fulfill the words of the Torah. I need to have a relationship with God. I need to lead a spiritual life. That's what Anochi Hashem Elokecha means. And when there's a Beis Hamikdash, when there's a temple, when the Jewish people are worshiping in that temple, and when there's a Malchus Beis David, when there's a Mashiach, when there's a king named King David, who all he does is sing the praises of God. All he does is sing about God's laws, about his statutes, about his righteousness, about spirituality. So when God speaks, how can we not speak? How can we not just reflect that which he says? And unfortunately, I wish there was more time, but I'm not going to be able to read the entire Medrash. There's a beautiful, beautiful piece here. It's worth seeing. It's the very end of Parsha Yisro on the Medrash, if you want to see it yourselves inside. But maybe once again we'll just taste it. I'm not going to read the whole thing inside, but we'll get a taste of it. It's a famous idea that when Hashem gave the Torah, no animals made any sounds. No birds were flapping with their wings. No people were speaking. No, there was nothing going on. It was absolute silence. And through the silence, Hashem's voice came, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Why? This was to express, as the Medrash, this was to express that there is nothing else besides for Hashem. There's nothing else besides for Hashem. Anytime a human being speaks, it's Hashem speaking through him. Anytime an animal moves, a bird flaps its wings, it's Hashem giving them the power. Anochi Hashem Elokecha means there is nothing besides for me. There's no reality within all of creation which is not an expression of God. Every single thing that you see is only Hashem. That's Anochi Hashem Elokecha. And the Medrash finishes off and says, Anochi, Anochi hu menachemchem. I, Hashem, uses the same exact word to talk about the Messiah's arrival, Mashiach's arrival. I am the one who will console you. Because the Medrash is expressing something so profound that in the final stages of Geula, in the final stages of redemption, it's Hashem, right? Like we find by Makas Becheres, it was He Himself. The actual Geula occurs through God Himself in a way that's openly manifest. You can't deny that it's not you. It's not us. It's not Moshe Rabbeinu. It's not anybody else. It's not our army overcoming and successfully defeating our enemies. Hashem, when it comes to the bottom line of it, it has to be only in a way that shows that He is all there is. There's silence. There's nothing else moving. Anochi Hashem Elokecha means there's only Hashem. Anything that you see movement in the world, any voices that you hear in the world, it's not Moshe Rabbeinu talking. We call it Torah it's Moshe, but it's Torah Hashem. It's the Torah of God. At the foundational level, the first mitzvah of the Aseret HaDibros is Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Anything that you see that's true, it's just a reflection of God's voice in the world. And ultimately, the redemption will become clearly manifest in the moment when it becomes clear that it's only Hashem doing it. Because it's the odds are so stacked against us. It's so impossible. There's no way else that it's only Hashem. You know, it's a mashal comparable to in 1967 when the paratroopers came into Jerusalem onto the Har HaBayis v'yadeinu. The gate came back to the Kaisel. There was almost no fighting. There was almost no resistance. They had white flags up in all of the Arab homes, white flags hanging down from their windows. We just came in, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, b'chvayde v'atzma, without a fight. When it's the moment, it's a redemptive moment when the Jewish people, for the first time in 1,899 years, has jurisdiction over Jerusalem, over Har HaBayis. What an awesome moment. And it comes with a white flag. And it comes with HaKadosh Baruch Hu clearly doing it without resistance. And it's very clear. Anochi hu menachemchem. It's Hashem who is being menachem us. Mitzvah Hashem, hopefully soon. I want to bless you. I ask you to bless me. Hashem should help us. That we should be able to hear the lion's roar, the roar of Hashem's voice. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am the animating force of all creation. We should be able to hear the voice of Anochi. Hashem is the one who is calling out and crying, and we should too. Over the fact that the Beis Hamikdash is not yet built, the temple is not yet there. Hashem should help us to hear the Anochi of that. We are just reflecting His voice. Hashem should help us to recognize that every single aspect in reality is all just Him. The flapping of the wings of the birds, the voices of the animals, the human beings who speak and their words come forth. It's just Hashem's voice speaking through them. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.